Well, there's so many different ways it could go.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think any of us really know because it could be like if Trump does win and is elected, that riots just hit every street corner in this country. That could be one thing. And it could be
that
like
will
worse
happen.
than ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that will
Worse
happen.
division and a real civil war. That could happen. It could happen the other way too. It could be that we suspend the elections. Have you thought of that? Because that's one I think about a lot. That there is no election.
I think that given everything we've seen so far, how brazen they are weaponizing the Department of Justice, waging this lawfare. Yes, of course, most prominently against Donald Trump, but they're also doing it very quietly against everyday Americans.
Oh yeah, grandmothers who are on the grass.
Exactly. Exactly.
Who
For
support Trump.
exercising their right to freedom of speech, freedom of expression.
They hate our civil rights, don't
Yes.
Well, just ours.
Just ours.
They don't mind Antifa's civil
Did,
rights.
Right.
did that
exactly.
start with the Patriot Act? Was this like incremental, like in Nazi Germany? It didn't just start overnight in Nazi Germany. The first thing was you had to register for a phone if you were Jewish, and every day in increments. And it seems to me like maybe incrementally, Trump might have stepped in and messed with their timeline a little bit for those 4 years.
Yeah.
And so they had to hurry up to catch up where they would have been if he hadn't been elected.
Yeah, there's certainly the uniparty of Washington,
yeah.
of warmongers who they never hesitate to take away more of our liberty with the excuse that they need to do so in order to make us more secure. And the Patriot Act was a huge turning point. And a lot of people don't know this. I get into this in detail in my book. Is they think that, well, all of this was necessary in order for us to secure our country and make sure there was not another 9/11 style terrorist attack. But the
and
reality
then there were
is
50.
The reality is, though, that many
but the reality
of those,
is there were not as big as that day.
well, they were trying to pass these authorities to violate our civil liberties and spy on everyday Americans long before 9/11 ever happened.
Yeah.
And rightly enough, there were people in Congress saying, no, that's unconstitutional. That's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. We're not going to go for it. So they waited and bided their time. The terrorist attack happened on 9/11 and they saw, here's our opportunity. And they jammed all of this stuff in legislation called the Patriot Act and threatened.
Which is not patriotic at all. They
No,
always
it's not.
They always have the
Of course.
reverse.
It's marketing.
Of course, it is.
Yeah.
No. When it's
But
doing
didn't
the
that
exact
suspend
opposite.
our Constitution in a way?
It had that effect. And they told people like Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich and others who had the courage to stand up against it that you are traitors. Anyone who votes against the Patriot Act is a traitor to our country who is inviting another 9/11 style terrorist attack into this country. And so they fear-mongered and browbeated and bullied members of Congress into submission.
Including Cynthia McKinney.
That's right. I think there was only one U.S. senator that voted against the Patriot Act courageously because he saw what was wrong with it.
Who was that?
And wasn't that just
he was from the Midwest. I can't remember his name right now.
It's
but
not important.
It seems to me like all of that Patriot Act shit was just a way to open the treasury to these warmongers. And it is the war party.
Yeah.
And then they can just, yeehaw, $3 billion went missing. You remember just before 9/11? I mean, they just stole everything we had.
And
they sold it.
They are still continuing to this day.
You think they sold our secrets to China? They never got called on the carpet for any of it. They sold, they left our weapons in Afghanistan, and it's proven so many of those weapons were used on October 7th against Israel, which that was the subject and the context of my tweet that got me fired, was that the Iran deal was an existential threat to the people of Israel. And I knew it. I'm a Jew, so I study that part of the world.
Of course.
And of course it came true. And it's like they still go, oh, you said someone looked like a monkey. I mean, they're just their stupidity. It's irritating to me.
Well, their tactics, what they did to you is like the oldest tried and true tactic that they use, because they refuse to have a dialogue based on substance, where you're making a substantive statement or an argument. They refuse to come back and say, no, Roseanne, you're wrong because of X, Y, or Z.
Right.
Instead, they resort to censoring, canceling, name calling, and smearing. And they do it, unfortunately, because it works.
It
Yeah.
sure does.
It
Works well.
works.
It
People
works
believe
for
it.
years. Yeah.
But
They're
this is where
jackfruit.
I have some hope that the tides are shifting a bit, because more and more Americans are turning off the traditional news
Yeah.
channels, whether they be cable or newspapers or
Propaganda
whatever.
channels.
Right, and they are propaganda channels, and they're looking. There are so many other alternative sources of information now, primarily through podcasts and
Mhm.
other things, that people have access to at least a broader um, spectrum of information to be able to make their own decisions for themselves, which is what this whole process is supposed to be
Isn't
about.
life about that?
It should be.
Right?